You're listening to the Coach Hodge and Banks Show on the Coaching Culture in Athletics Radio Broadcast Network. Sit back and enjoy the show. The views and opinions discussed in this podcast aren't necessarily the opinion of the host or Coach Hodge and Banks Show on the Coaching and Culture Athletics Network.
All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us on the Athletic Culture and Coaching Podcast. I'm Evan Swanson. Chuck Banks is out tonight, but that's not stopping us, and I apologize for not having the flashy little intro. That's on his computer and stuff, so forgive us. We have our first female coach tonight, so that's a great honor for us to have Alexis Kauzlarich here to talk to us about, just the mad culture in sports. We have a great lineup of questions, and she's going to tell us a little bit about herself. So, Alexis, thank you for joining us, and please tell us a little about yourself. Give us some background.
I'm Alexis Kauzlarich. I'm from Centerville, Iowa. I graduated in 2011 from Moulton Udell High School. I went to William Penn University, and now I coach and work at EBF, Eddyville, Blacksburg, Fremont. I coach, I'm going in my second year of being the head cross-country coach, freshman basketball. I just got done this spring coaching head boys track, and I got done this summer being the freshman softball coach there.
Yeah, so talking before the show, sounds like you're definitely busy. We'll touch on each one of those sports as we go along tonight. But let's start with the most recent one. Cross country. Tell us a little about the program you're trying to establish there. What are some of your goals for this upcoming season?
Well, so last year was my first year, and I've never coached cross country before last year, and I love the atmosphere. It's a very individual sport, but also team and the best sportsmanship there could be. I have about 40-some kids out, 7th through 12th grade. We had about 30 kids out last year, graduated 7. Last year, my theme was kind of uncomfortable equals growth. I think that says a lot in this sport, especially because going out and running 3 miles is not always comfortable, or running at a 7-minute mile pace is not always comfortable. But after you're done, you see that accomplishment and you feel better about yourself and we start our season next Monday at Knoxville, so it should be a good season.
That's exciting. In college, a lot of my friends were cross-country runners, and I could never understand it. I'm not a person who enjoys running at all. What do you use to motivate some of those kids to push themselves to that 7-minute mile pace? I know a lot of it can be on their own mental motivation. But what are some things that you've, come up with or thought of to help push the kids? Because let's be honest, when kids are running, sometimes they hit that wall, they just want to stop. So what are some things you do to motivate them?
Well, so this past summer, I didn't really get into it a lot last year, but I've always told myself as a coach that if I can't do it, if I can do it, they can do it. So I really tried this past summer, I tried running with them when we did our summer workouts and just showing them, hey, I'm doing this with you. I'm along for the ride with you. We're going to get there together. It's more about we. And, so you take a sport that's very individualistic and you put it towards a team, we. So we're going to do this. But I think that's a little bit more motivating. They see their coach doing it 20, I'm 26 years old. If I can run 3 miles, I can run 5 miles, then what can you do at 16, 17, 18? So that's what I kind of preach about and just try to instill in their minds that they can do it.
That's great. I couldn't imagine doing the running I put my players through. So kudos for you for going out with yours. Did you feel like that really improved the kids' morale and really kind of pushed them a little bit more that, that you were running with them? And did you ever beat a few of the kids and, did that motivate them to work harder? Let's be honest. No player wants to get beat by their coach, no matter how young, old, or whatever the coach may be.
Yeah, I think so. This year, I actually have talked to a couple of my softball players into going out, and our starting shortstop actually is running this year. And there for a while, I really tried to get her to come run the summer workouts with us, and she was very hesitant because she didn't know if she could make it. I don't know if I can run those 3 miles, or I don't know if I can run that 5 mile. I said, you can do it. As long as you learn how to pace yourself. And I think when she saw me doing it and she's like, okay, I can do this. I can push through. So yeah, I think it is very motivating to see your coach out there working and sweating with you.
Oh, I would agree completely. So this is your second year doing cross country, and we'll stay on this topic a little bit. Last year being your first, looking back on your first season coaching cross country, I'm sure you reflected on it quite a bit. What are some of the big changes, you see yourself making from last year to this year? Have you set some personal goals for yourself? And if so, what are some of those goals?
Well, so last year I was new. And the kids, it was more about getting my trust across, being able to trust them and they can trust me. So last year our practices were more going out and running. Okay, using our GPS watches. I'm going to sit here. You're going to go out and run 60 minutes, and I want you to come back in those 60 minutes. I'm going to record your mileage and see how far you went. This year I held my workouts are more accountable. So I would take a gator out, and the gator would be in the back of the pack, and I'd say, okay, this is where we're running. This is the route. Get there, and then we'll have our workout, and then we'll run back. So everybody was able to do 5 miles that day, 3 miles, just because we ran together. I picked out a set route instead of more individualized last year. And that's what I kind of want. So last week, together in all, our kids got about 19 miles in, where last year I was only maybe having 2 runners get about 6.5 miles in a week or a day. So that would be about 25 miles. So now this year, all 20 of my runners, or 20, however many I had last week there, got in 19 miles. So I thought that was a big accomplishment. I also added the weight room because I know a lot of kids, they aren't just doing this. A lot of my runners they're not doing it for the competitive side. I have about a couple that will be competitive in it, but a lot of them are doing it to get in shape for softball or basketball. So I add that weight room so they can kind of see how it's benefiting for the other sports that they play.
That's great. We'll come back to that whole weight room topic a little bit later. But one thing you brought up was trust. And I think that's such a key component in sports nowadays, and I feel like it lacks sometimes, especially in that coach-parent-player dynamic. Do you feel last year, trying to instilling that trust in those runners this year, push those kids to, 19 miles in a week, which is impressive. Do you think it started with that trust building the year before?
Yeah, I think they didn't know. I think now that they know I'm back, so many times kids have a different coach every year. Like the same coach doesn't stick around. So I think for them to see what my plans, I lay it out in the long run, what my plans will be. And for them to know I'm back and I'm ready to go and I made adjustments to our workouts, I think, that helped last year.
That's great. So you also said you coach softball, track, freshman basketball. You keep yourself pretty busy. When you look at all those, 4 programs roughly that you're a part of and, created yourself, when we talk about culture, what are some of the key elements that you kind of pull from each one that help you kind of make your own culture for your cross country team or your track team? And what are some of the main components that you look at as, what, this is working. This is what's making our program successful. It's making the kids want to be here. Something that just helps build positive relationships and builds a good environment.
I think one thing is I think you have to be upfront with the kids about your goals and what you see for the team, and then let them be upfront with you about their goals and what they want to see for themselves. And once you can clearly communicate that, I think you're going to have a lot of trust and you're going to have a lot of success in your program, because it brings honesty and it shows the kids what you're about, who you are. But so like I like to write out goal sheets at the beginning of the season, and then I might write out another or send a survey through Google Docs saying, okay, what's your mid-season goals? And then next season goals at the end of this season, I might send out another goal sheet. And then I might ask them, okay, how are you going to get there? What can I do to help you? So I think that's the biggest thing is just being upfront with your kids and let them know what your program's about and who you are as a person.
I think that's so important. I think a lot of times our kids see us as just coaches, people who crack the whip on them, but we're so much more than that. We care about their well-being. We care about the goals they're setting. We want them to set goals. I think that's important and a great skill to get into just for everyday life. So you have kids set goal sheets and they have, their mid-season goals and whatnot. What do you do if you see a kid not really, reaching their goal or maybe not working as hard towards their goal? Do you pull them aside and talk to them, or do you just kind of let them, well, it's their goal. If they don't reach it, well, that's their own fault. What type of approach do you take with that?
I will maybe print out the goal sheets and make sure I have them. And then if I do see something, I might pull them out and I might just like point at that one goal and say, this is what you put down. How are you going to make it there? How are you going to get there? What you're doing in practice right now isn't working. So we need to tweak something or make an adjustment or something to get that goal.
That's great. So, a lot of people, when they're judging a program, they look at wins and losses, and that's how they measure their success. That's the measuring stick anymore. But programs are so much more than that anymore. They're supposed to be this environment that helps nurture and challenge kids and handles adversity. So do you do anything that really challenges the kids, maybe mentally or physically throughout the season, or maybe, a certain practice or situation? My high school coach did it to me. The guy I started coaching with, he always told the kids, the game is important and fun, but the lessons I'm teaching you throughout the game are just as important, if not more so. So what do you do that helps, that's not that win-loss thing that matters, but that helps build better kids, better character throughout your programs?
So last Monday, Centerville had a student athlete that was battling some illness or health problems. And so what I sent out a text and I sent it on our Facebook page. And I just said, let's wear red tonight for Centerville student athlete Miles Clausen. And then at the beginning of practice, I did let the kids know what was going on with him and how he just got done playing at the state baseball tournament and how every day we need to be thankful for being able to do what we do here in practice and always bring 100% effort and good attitude, because you never know what could happen the next day. And so we did that for a fellow school district that's in our conference, just to show our sport, and hopefully he gets better, and sending positive thoughts and to the Centerville community, as well as showing our kids that it's good to care for our opponents.
That brings up such a great point right there. So often, especially high school kids, they get more in that competitive atmosphere than adults do, and they don't see the big picture sometimes. And so by you doing that with your kids, you're really instilling them good morals, good values, and that, it doesn't matter if they're our opponent, they're still people every day. And I think that's wonderful that you do that. So, you coach 4 different sports. Are you the same person coaching in each sport? Is your demeanor the same? Are your antics the same? Or does it kind of change based on the sport that you're coaching?
I would say I'm probably the same person. I'm one that I don't really yell at the kids a lot, because I couldn't take that as an athlete. I would just shut down and I couldn't play the last quarter of basketball, or I couldn't pick my head back up and bounce back for the next at bat in softball or so I'm one where if a kid makes a mistake, I might pull them aside, sit down with them, give them a side hug or something, and just say, hey, it's all right. We all make mistakes. We're just got to figure it out, learn from our mistake, and try to not do that mistake the next game.
Well, once again, you bring up another great point. There are so many coaching styles. And do you have any kids that sometimes respond better to, getting their butt chewed or, having the coach raise their voice to them a little bit?
Yeah, there are some kids that would rather have that respond better to being yelled at, but, or getting on. But I found more, I think it's these kids nowadays, they just want somebody to, give them a high five or, hey, you did a good job. So I feel like the pat on the back or the hug is more effective with these kids now than it was maybe 10, 15 years ago.
Oh, yeah, I would agree with that. And I think that's one thing we need to get into, more on these shows as they go along, is how that's drastically changed. And, at the high school level anymore, you see parents and you see coaches that have that more embracive look, like they want to pull a kid aside and give them a pat on the back and more calming demeanor. And, you still have your coaches that yell a little bit. Either the parents yelling more and the coaches yelling more is at the youth sports. I think that's something that is starting to change a little bit. We see that reversed. So, you coach for sports. I keep bringing that up because I don't know how you have a life outside of that, because that's a busy, busy schedule. Great for you for doing that. I'm starting to do too, and I just feel like I have no time whatsoever. Handle your off.
Wait, what? Can you say that again?
Yeah. How do you handle your off seasons for each sport? Do you, when cross country is done, you have a little time off and you go into basketball? During the summer, what do you do? Do you just work with mainly your cross country or track kids, or do you just have your hand in all the sports to that moment?
So like my off season for cross country this year, for the month of June, most of my distance runners also ran track just because it goes hand in hand. But for the month of June, I only really met with them once a week, because if they could just keep up running once a week and then run on their own, if they really were competitive and want to do it, they'll find a way. So we met once a week in the month of June for cross country, and I invited all the athletes. I didn't just keep it to my cross country kids. We actually had a couple volleyball players join us, and we had a couple alumni. So I was also bringing in the community, and a couple alumni joined us. And then when we got to July, I told the girls, and boys, we're going to start running twice a week, just getting our mileage up, because August comes around. Now we start. So now we got to be ready. So, because I understand kids are busy. I do want those kids to play 4 sports. I don't want them just specialize in one, because that's what I did. So that's how I did it this off season, this summer. Is June. It was mainly softball season. It was so tough. It was a tough schedule with games every day. So we did 1 day a week in June, and then July we did twice a week, and then August came around and we're ready to go.
That's great. And I think it's awesome that you had alumni come in and run with you guys. Did the kids like that? Did they find it interesting, or are they like, why are there a bunch of old people running with us? No,
actually, so one of the alumni, it was the shortstop that was on the runner-up state championship team in 2017. She came in and ran with us, and I think they kind of liked that because those kids were 8th graders when she was playing, or freshmen when she was playing. So it kind of brought back, it took her into a role model. It kept her involved, and so I think it actually motivated the kids to still get after it. That's
awesome. I got to see if I have any alumni that want to come back and run. I'm going to say that no. Jake Frazee, if you're listening, please come back and run with us. I think that'd be great for everyone, including myself. We talked a little bit before the broadcast that, Eddyville has a great parent support system. Will you just kind of elaborate on that? What are some of the things that the parents do that get the kids involved? Because, I mean, 7-12, having 40 kids for cross country is an amazing number. So what are some of the things that the parents do in the community that really push their kids to be involved so much?
Well, I just have to, I have to say, I had this summer, we had even not only alumni running, but we had our school employees running. Our school AD, he started running this year, and he would be out in the public. The kids would see him running down streets and stuff. We had parents running. I actually put a spreadsheet together, and I had, whoever can get the most miles by the end of the summer, get a free cross-country shirt. So I had teachers logging their mileage. I had parents logging mileage. I had alumni. So it was just kind of, that was something that kind of brought everybody together. And when you can do that, tie the community into a program, they're going to be backing you no matter what. And I think the parents for softball especially, they take ownership and they coach their kids in the USSSA and Little League. So it's kind of nice to have that connection with them.
That's great. So, one question, with parents being coaches, do you ever see or have you had many parents overstep their boundaries or, any rough encounters with the parents or heard of any rough encounters because the parent doesn't like the way a coach is doing something or, they think their kid should be playing or the coach doesn't know anything, which I think that's a common theme in a lot of communities that coaches don't know that much. Do you have a lot of that in your community?
Yes and no. I think all parents can always get that protective side, and they're their kids and they want to just see their kids do well. And so if maybe their kid didn't have had an error or struck out or so, I mean, yeah, you see that, but they do a good job of, waiting till the game's over or waiting a couple days before coming to talk to a coach or talking to their kids first after the game. So, I mean, I've had some encounters, but for the most part, the community has been very, very awesome, and they've been very supportive of what we're doing at Eddyville. So,
well, that's great. Speaking of those encounters, if you don't have to share too much, but how do you handle or what's your procedure for if you have an up parent?
Well, so my first year when I was the head coach at 21, and so I didn't really think about that, and I did have a few parents, and then a couple years ago, I was coaching junior high volleyball, and I had some parents upset. I think I had 33 junior high volleyball kids, and I tried to mix up the teams because at the 7th grade, they're just now learning how to play the game. So I tried to mix up the teams so that it wasn't really an A, B, and C team. But I might have got a little carried away, a little emotional on the sidelines, and we had a eruption go off in the gym, and I had a conflict with a parent, but the next day they sent me a text and said, "Hey, I'm sorry, that was out of line. So-and-so really loves volleyball and they're doing a good job and they like you as a coach. I'm so sorry." And I just responded back just saying, "It's not a problem. I understand. You're just being a parent." So I think we all can blow up at times, and we need to step back and remember it's a game. They're learning.
Yeah, the fact that you got an apology is, in my book's fairly impressive. I don't think I've gotten one of those before, which, if I got one, I think I'd frame it. That's pretty great. You've coached so many sports, looking at that, we live in a time where kids are being pushed into youth sports left and right. And, youth baseball, 10, 12-year-olds are playing 30, 40 games a summer, which to me is just ridiculous. How would you like to see the progression go from youth sports to junior high to high school? In some communities, junior high sports are, they're competitive. It's A, B, C team. We want the best on A, best on B, best on C. And I like what you did mixing the teams up. I think that's great, getting everyone a chance to play with each other. Because some kids don't bloom till later on. They aren't the athlete till later on. So you coaching so many different sports, how would you like to see that progression in youth, junior high, and high school evolve? So that way, when you get kids at the high school level, they are at the best, they're at the most knowledgeable, and that's the chance where you guys can win games, win meets, and win championships.
Well, I think how Iowa is set up, how our union sets up our sports seasons is great because it gives kids a chance to be that multi-sport athlete, whereas in Missouri and other states, they have to choose between track or baseball. So I think at the youth level, I think parents need to, when it comes to August, it's volleyball season or it's cross-country season. So get together, get 6 to 10 kids, girls, and put together a volleyball travel team. And then I think when it comes to November, now we got to dust off, put away our volleyball shoes, get out of basketball shoes, and let's get a youth basketball team going. And just kind of spring comes around. Now it's Little League softball. And I think if we can keep, instead of playing all year round at that youth level of, playing softball all year round or playing basketball all year round, if we can do this seasons just like we do at high school and the junior high level, I think that's the best way to go about youth sports.
I agree. I think it gets carried away anymore to where, I think one of the biggest issues is so many parents, I'm sure there are so many in your community, think their kid is a college athlete. There are probably so many parents that think their kid is college athlete material. And, you ran track at the college level. I played basketball at the college level. It is so difficult there. It is incredibly difficult. There are very few college athletes at any of the schools, maybe one per school. And that's just based on the percentages across the country, And then we have all these kids that, they're going to play 2 sports so they can, maybe do basketball and during basketball season, but they're going to do baseball the rest of the months. And they play so much that I think it harms them anything else. Do you have a lot of kids, in your community that specialize in one sport?
Not too many, just because we are still that smaller school, 2A, you still kind of need the numbers out. So you need that baseball player to go play football, or you need that football player to run track, so not too many specialized, but we have a few that do specialize at our school.
And what are they specializing in? The ones most common to me, at least in our community, is baseball and basketball, and occasionally a couple of football, but not so much.
I would say probably baseball and softball would be the ones that they're specializing in.
And you brought up another point. I'm not from the state of Iowa. I'm going on my 3rd year here, and Iowa is the only state with summer baseball and summer softball. And it is nice because you're not competing with kids or soccer kids or whatnot. But do you see any disadvantage to the softball or baseball season being literally the whole month of June, roughly half the month of July, and then you have those fall sports? If you make the state tournament, like Central Lee did, Centerville did, those kids that play football, they literally had a week off, and then their next season starts. Do you see that as maybe causing some burnout in some kids if they do play baseball and tired before and they don't want to do football because they don't have enough time off? Do you see that being maybe an issue in the state of Iowa? And
I mean, I don't think it's an issue, just because in the state of Iowa we give kids a certain season for volleyball. We have it separate, 7 weeks or 10 weeks in volleyball, and then you have your winter sport for basketball or wrestling. So I don't really see it as a burnout, just because we're used to that in Iowa. I do know that I think the Iowa Girls High School Association and the boys are going to do a dead week in the week of July, I believe, like towards the end of July, where there can't be any practices or open gyms that week, so parents can go on vacation and stuff. So I think they're trying to get that organized.
Which I think would be great. I didn't know summer baseball was a thing, so I got here when I moved here, and baseball's going on. I'm like, oh, it must be state tournament, because that's when it was in Colorado, end of May. They're like, oh no, season's just starting, and I just kind of looked at them like, what, really? And it depends on conferences. There was I think 3 weeks straight where our boys played 5 games a week.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever feel, because you do multiple sports, that sometimes those summer sports takes away from some of those kids that want to maybe attend a sports camp, a volleyball team camp? They can't go because softball, because a lot of team camps are sometimes Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Do you have any of those issues at your school?
Actually, I mean, I don't think anybody missed a camp because of softball or because of, missed a softball game because of a camp. But I have heard of kids doing that. But I just think if the kid's up front with the coach and communicates well with them, and, the coach understands, well, this kid's sport is volleyball, but I appreciate them out just because their athletic ability and their how hard they work and how they're a team player. So I think if you're, as a player, if you're up front with your coach, I think they'll let you go and they'll be supportive of you going to that volleyball camp or basketball camp in the summertime.
Yeah, it just still blows my mind. Summers are so busy here in Iowa, So as we kind of come down to the pipe, got 15 minutes left, what is kind of your, do you have any like non-negotiables as a coach, for any of your sports, things that, as a player, like these are things you must do every single day. And if you don't, there are consequences. Are you a coach that has consequences? Some coaches don't. They believe that, they made a mistake, I'll talk to them. But some of them have, oh, you missed practice, you're running an extra 10 miles today. Where do you fall within that? What are some of your non-negotiables and consequences?
I think it depends on each player. I like all the, people want to be treated the same, but we're not all the same. And like I said, there might be one player so for cross country, as long as you give me 110% effort and a good attitude and you don't complain and you're there early, or you are up front with me, like you text me the day before saying, hey coach, I can't make it, I have to work, or I'm out of town, or I'm usually like, okay, that's fine. Make sure you run on your own so you're not sore or you're not behind. But to me, like, I can't really punish them because, we're already running 5 miles. So now you're going to go run 10 miles. That's maybe not realistic, so to me, it depends on the excuse, and it depends on which athlete it is, honestly. We're all different. We're not all the same. So.
Yeah. I think most sports, the punishment is running, and I don't know how that would apply to cross country. Push-ups, maybe. I don't know. That'd be an interesting one. That'd be interesting. But let's focus on, where do you get some of your inspiration from? Who are some of the people that you looked up to, as you grew up, and some of your icons today that you not necessarily mirror the way they've done things. You like the programs or culture they've built that you just think, you know what, this person's done it right. I want to take some of their stuff and make it my own. Who are some of your role models?
Well, so I kind of got into, so basketball has been kind of one of my sports that I love coaching. I just like the atmosphere, and I like how the game's played and stuff. And so I kind of got into like 5 years ago, Pat Summitt,
mm-hmm.
and reading a lot of her books and just who she was as a person. And so she's one of them. And then I would say probably my brother, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
We're really close. Like when I was a kid, we used to be best friends. We always competed against each other on the playground, or, we always played backyard baseball or two-hand touch football or something in the backyard. So, and just watching him deal with his athletes and, to always being able to talk sports with him. So yeah, he's probably one that I really look up to. And then probably my dad. I never really got coached by him, but I would always attend the practices, little league practices that my brothers would be coached at. And so I don't know, those three are probably my biggest role models, just how they handled themselves and how they conducted practices. I think it's kind of an elite field, but those would probably be my three biggest influences in my coaching.
I bet get-togethers with your family are great. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of sports that get talked about quite often, which I think is wonderful. I'm the only coach in my family, and I talk sports with my dad a little bit, my brother, and you just get such a different perspective being a coach. Some of the stuff they throw out, you're just in your head thinking, can't do that. Like, that's not how it works anymore. Exactly. And the perspective you gain from being, on a coach. So let's say that, you're fairly young. You were a college athlete, high school athlete not that long ago. Did you ever realize as a player, as an athlete, the stuff that has to go through your coach's mind on a daily basis for practices, for games, for meets, for any of that stuff? And has that just been a shock being a coach?
Yeah. I planning out like my first week of practice 2 weeks ago for cross country. I'm like, okay, I got to make sure it's going to be organized. Everything's going to fit well, and we're going to get something out of this, because if we don't get anything out of it, it's just going to be wasted. So, it takes a lot more thought planning a practice and making sure every kid understands why we're doing this and why are we not doing this. And, it's a lot, especially track and cross country, because you have all those entries and all that paperwork, and it's like, whew, this is a lot of time. But,
oh yeah. Being a player, you took so much for granted that your coaches had to do for you, and just all the things that went through their mind. You said you started, your first head coaching gig was at 21. Looking back, what are some of the things you would tell yourself now that now back to your 21-year-old self?
I think that the biggest thing, and I found that out this year, is coach the kids that want to be coached. And then hopefully the others will come along. And if they don't, then they'll just do what they feel is necessary. You can't connect to every kid. So that's what I probably thought I had to do, is connect to every kid, where now I know, I'm going to coach the kids that want to be coached, and hopefully I can bring along 2 or 3 more kids for the ride.
That's such a realistic approach. And I like that, because we've had a lot of guests on here and it's important to build relationships with your kids, to make an attempt with all the kids. Same as being a teacher, we want all the kids to be successful and do our best for them all. But I look at it like this, and this is what I say a lot of times about education and about coaching, and I think it applies. I don't think people fully understand it until you're in these positions. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And I think that applies to education. It applies to coaching. Like, we can give the tools to the kids. We can tell them what we need them to do and everything. But at the end of the day, they just might not want to do it. And you can't force them to do it. You can't force a horse to drink. You can't just shove its, face down the tank. You just have to let it be.
Exactly.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because that's not an approach. I think all coaches think that, and I think all coaches do that, but no coach ever really wants to say that. Because I think in the parent perspective, sometimes it might say, well, they're not trying with my kid. Well, is your kid trying with us? It's a two-way street. And so I'm really happy you brought that up. That's such a refreshing, very realistic approach. So I'm very happy about that. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
So, one down, and it's one I ask sometimes. I don't think I've even asked it yet, in the past week. You said you do a lot of, you like to read books on coaching and whatnot. And I do too. There are so many great books out there, and the perspective in coaching's book isn't, the X's and O's. A lot of time it's, the relationship building, the culture building, just some of the neat little tidbits that you learn from each coach. And it just blows your mind that some of the, most high profile coaches do some of these things. What are some of the best books you've read? I know you mentioned Pat Summitt, but are there some other ones that you've just really liked to read?
I think there was one, John Calipari from Kentucky. I think it's Kentucky, right?
Yep.
I think it was Putting the Players First.
Yes. Such a good book.
Yeah, that one's a good one. And then Vivian Strenger from Rutgers.
Yep.
She that one was a good book, and it had some Iowa ties, because she used to coach at University of Iowa, and then she went on to the Rutgers University. Those are 2 big ones that talk about relationships and just talks about what they overcame in their lives. But those are two. And then Pat Summitt, The Definite Dozen. I don't know if you heard that one. I haven't
heard of that.
She has a definite dozen, and it's how she organizes her program, her whole basketball program. It was just 12 rules that they had to follow if they wanted to be a Lady Vol. If they didn't want to be a Lady Vol, then she would just say, all right, well then you need to go find another school. But yeah.
That's interesting. I'll definitely have to read that one because Pat Summitt, such an amazing coach, such an amazing job she did building a culture and just a dynasty at Tennessee, which is just wonderful. Players First, the one by John Calipari, I owe my buddy and guy who was on the show, about a month ago, Robert Harmon. He bought that for me as a gift for me being his assistant. Great book, such great insight, and I think it applies a lot to the high school. Those books that, focus on college culture and college building, they apply it, to the high school level too, because I think all coaches, want their kids to go on to the next level. And that doesn't mean, college sports or professional, but the next level of being successful, levels of success and that hard-driven adversity lifestyle. I think you really taste that in sports, and you really taste that in high school sports. But we want that in life for our kids. I think that book does a great job pointing it out. So we're winding down here, and this has been a great conversation. Are there any shout-outs you want to give, any comments, tidbits, anything you want to give before we say goodnight?
Definitely probably I would like to, shout out to EBF Community Schools and all their support that they have gave me this past 3 years, 2 years in cross country, and all the coaches I have got to work with. It's been a privilege working under them, with them. Obviously my family, and definitely my brother. I think he starts his football pretty soon, so I hope he can get a couple nice wins right off the bat there in Panorama. But no, just very thankful and blessed to be able to coach and do what I like to do.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We hope to have you back, maybe throughout your cross-country season or at the end just to hear how everything's going. You stay plenty busy, so you're still out right away. But, first, thank you for all you do, spreading yourself so thin over all those sports because, coaching is difficult. People get out of coaching because it's crazy, but you doing four sports is just amazing. So, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and, we appreciate it, and good luck on all your seasons.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Thank you. Good night.